All right. Well, I would like to welcome everybody, all those of you that are joining us. And it looks like it's slowly trickling in here. We're up to about 160 something now online with us. I'll let it keep going here for a little bit before we get too much into it. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. It's still trickling up, close to 300 now. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us again. This is our second installment of the Insights Over the Lunch Hour program that the executive staff are putting on here at the council. We got a pretty positive review from the last one. I mean, there were a few boos and hisses in the survey responses that we got, but overall, it seemed it was very well received. So I'm hoping that we can kind of duplicate that for you guys here today that have joined us and kind of bring you up to speed on what's going on at the council level and then at the member board level as well. And then again, open ourselves up so that everyone can ask questions wide open, unless it's dealing with a complaint or a pending application. We won't take questions on those, but otherwise it's you've got free range on asking us anything you want to ask about. Just a reminder, what kind of the format of this is, each of us are going to take 10 minutes to kind of present on our particular agency or board. I'll take 10 minutes for the council, and then Christina and Sarah and Diane will each take 10 minutes for each of their respective boards. And then I've got Tim Spear, who's our director of operations. He's here. And then Patrick Hyde, who's our general counsel. They're here to help us answer questions and monitor the Q&A that's going on down below. And to kind of keep me in line. If I say something stupid, they can get me back on track. But with that, let me just kind of go over what the premise behind these types of presentations are. I know licensees and members of the public often probably think what's going on up there is kind of mysterious, or we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to kind of visit with us on a one-on-one basis. It's tough in an agency this size to develop a personal relationship with your licensee or your regulated population base, just because, at Psych Board, when I was ED there, we went from 9,000, is a little less than 10,000, almost 10,000 licensees, to where now we're up to over 70,000 licensees. It's difficult to keep and maintain a one-on-one, to maintain that availability of in-person interaction back and forth. But that's what we're trying to do here. And so I want to encourage you, if you've got questions, if you've got comments, please don't hesitate to speak up once we open the floor up to y'all, because we do like to hear back from y'all. We do like to hear the questions. If you see that we're doing something you think is wrong or that we need to tighten it up in an area, I'm perfectly open to criticism, guys. I promise you're not going to hurt any of our feelings. If you see that we're doing something good, I'd also like you to tell staff that if you find that they're doing something good in an area, because a little bit of that goes a long way. You don't get a whole lot of that in government. But the way we're going to handle this is the order will be myself, and then Sarah's going to take over for the MFT board and the social work board. And then Diane, Miss Moore, she'll handle the psychology board. And then lastly, Christina will take over for the LPC board. Now, one of the good things about, one of the benefits about attending this seminar, if this is your first time, is Chaplain Stoglin, who's a board member for the MFT board, had come to me after our first presentation and said, "Hey, why don't you make this so that they can get CE credit for it?" And I thought, well, that seems like a pretty good idea. I think executive staff talking about rulemaking and the goings on of the agency and kind of the inner workings of it ought to count towards continuing education, especially towards your ethics. And we presented this to the council, and we presented this to a couple of the boards, and everybody agreed that was a good idea. So if you stay for the entirety of the program and you take the little survey at the end, it's very simple. It's a 2-question survey. It's just questions like, did you find it helpful? Would you recommend it to a friend? If you do that and you take that survey, it will capture your email address, and then I can send out a continuing education certificate to you for 1 hour that you can use towards your ethics requirements on your renewal requirements. So if you need the hour, stick around, take the survey, and we'll send you the certificate. If you don't, just listen, come and go as you please. So with that, let's kind of get going. And by the way, we are recording this, so we'll post this to our YouTube channel later on so that other other people can listen to what was said here and kind of hopefully learn from it. What are some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about? The first thing I want to visit with you about is, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to turn off the chat. I need everyone to use if you're sending in questions, I need you to use the Q&A rather than the chat. That way we're not having to monitor multiple channels of this. I don't want to have to be flipping back and forth between Q&A and chat. But one of the first things I want to talk to everybody about is possible changes coming to the application and licensing fees. If you've been watching really since the beginning of BHEC, we've been flirting with the idea of reducing application and licensing fees. That was one of the core things, a core mission that BHEC was created to do, was to improve efficiency, reduce costs to the stakeholders, i.e. all of you. And so we started very early on. We launched something called a Fee Review Advisory Committee, which is made up of various stakeholders. All the state association groups are on it. And we've conducted a pretty extensive investigation into what we think our fees need to be or can be to still cover our operational costs, and yet reduce the amount of excess revenue that goes over to the legislature. And we've come up, that advisory committee has come up with an amount. And if you've watched the past BHEC meeting, you'll see, and it's still out there. You can go to the previous BHEC meeting, download the meeting materials, and you'll find the spreadsheet in there where we talk about the committee's recommendation. And basically what the committee has recommended is that our application and licensing fees ought to be set at the lesser of what they currently are, or 75% of the national average. Now, that's going to represent a pretty significant, if we do that, if we go that route, that's going to represent a pretty significant reduction in the amount of excess revenue that's sent to the legislature every year. That still leaves us with plenty of money to fund the agency. Everything here is funded and covered at that amount. But if anybody is familiar with agency budgeting, especially those of you that came over from Psych Board, you'll know that we generated well in excess of what it takes to operate or run the agency. And that excess money is then aggregated into the state's general revenue fund that they use for other things. It may be a road out in Marfa. It may be drainage out in Rains County. You never know what it's going to be used for because it just goes into the GR fund. Now, the problem with making such a significant reduction like that is that's going to impact the biennial revenue estimate, which is the amount of money that the comptroller uses to determine what money we have available for the upcoming legislative session. In other words, it's going to reduce the amount of money that the legislature has to spend in the upcoming session. And they have grown accustomed to receiving, that I think it's like $1.3 million per year is what we generate over and above what it takes to run the agency. So you're looking at roughly $3.6 million per biennium is what we generate in excess revenue over and above what it takes to run. So if you cut out and if we reduce the fees to what the Fee Review Advisory Committee had recommended, it would reduce that excess revenue to about $200,000 or $300,000 per year. So you're looking at maybe $500,000 to $600,000 over the biennium in excess revenue, down from 1.6. That's a pretty significant drop, and that's going to be a drop that's going to be recognized. So there's some pretty serious question and debate about going on at the council right now about, do we want to make that type of a significant jump? And what we did at the last council meeting to address this is, because we're afraid that we don't want to put ourselves in a situation of adopting those fee reductions and then have the legislature say, well, we still want you to generate that money, so put them back, and then us have to make up for any lost time, any lost money that has already gone by. So what we've done is we have said, all right, we're going to right now, this is the plan. We're going to bring back at the May meeting a proposed rule change that reduces the fees in accordance with the committee's recommendation, but the effective date of that will be September of 2023. Now, the reason we're doing that is that will give us time to showcase this fee change to the legislature and the LBB, the Legislative Budget Board. And if they don't like it, we can make changes to it before those fees are ever implemented. That way it doesn't feel like we're jerking the rug out from underneath you guys of, hey, we made the fee change. Y'all are already enjoying the benefit of it. And then the ledge or the LBB comes in and says, well, we need that extra money, so put it back. And then we have to claw it back. We don't want to put ourselves in that situation. This, while it extends the effective date out a good ways, it gives everybody plenty of time to get used to it at the legislative and the LBB level. So that's where we're going right now. So be watching at the May council meeting for that change to come up. Patrick and I will work on that draft change. We'll have it ready to go at May, and then it'll be debated and probably proposed at that meeting. The next item that I want to talk to you about that's happening at the council level is the Standardization Committee. And I know I got to hustle up because I'm getting close to my 10 minutes. The big thing that's going on right now at the Standardization Committee, and if any of you are on it, I see some of you out there are actually on the Standardization Committee. The big thing that's come out of the Standardization Committee is the common CE rule, or the standardized CE rule. We looked at how all the boards were handling continuing education or professional development, as it's called at Psych, and we've tried to standardize that rule so that it's the same language for all 4 boards. You can set, the boards have specific amounts. They all have almost different amounts of continuing education they require, but the way it's calculated, the way CE is handled is the same for every board. And the reason that's helpful for us is we don't have to learn and keep track of 4 different ways of doing things at the staff level. It's all handled the same way. The board's treated the same way. And for the most part, most of the CE numbers are the same. Like, everybody's going to, according to, if this proposed change is actually adopted by all the boards. Now, it's not the law yet. Your current rules are still the law of the land. But if this change is adopted, it would be, if you write a book or a journal article, you can claim up to 5 hours of CE credit. There are just various things that have been standardized in it. But, what hasn't changed is psychology. You'd still have to have 40 hours of continuing education. LPC, you still have to have 24. And then MFT and social work is still 30 hours. And of course, that's over the course of the biennium. So none of that has changed. That's all still the same. Those boards chose to keep that at the same as they have in the past. But those changes are working their way through the pipes right now. So be watching the council meeting for that as it comes up. I think MFT, I think 2 of the boards have already proposed it, or it's already been proposed at the council level. And then the other 2 are going to be proposed in the May council meeting. As far as there's a host of other topics that are being batted around right now at standardization. We've kind of had to put a pause on it because I'm right in the middle of dealing with strategic planning. The strategic planning instructions were released on Friday. And so I'm having to deal with that now. And then, of course, LAR, we're already gearing up, trying to figure out what we're going to need to ask for, what we're going to need to do with the legislative appropriations request. That's basically our ask to the legislature about, hey, here's what we need in terms of funding to accomplish our mission. So those are 2 huge projects that I have to focus on. And so I really need to put all my time and effort into doing that. Workforce study, we're rocking along pretty good on that. We've had a couple of good meetings on that. I was hoping we'd be a little bit further along than what we are, but that was just me being overly optimistic. I think we're probably right where we need to be as far as timeline goes. I think I was just overly optimistic there, but I'm hoping that we'll have, I doubt we'll have anything ready to go at the May meeting, but probably the council meeting after that, we'll be able to bring back a workforce study and have the council approve it or, make changes to it if they see fit. Customer service report. All of you, probably a significant number of you have participated in the customer service report or survey that we sent out. I forget how many thousands of comments we got on that. It was a whole bunch. I read every one of them. I don't have much of a life is all I can tell you, but I read them all, and that was my children's bedtime story for quite a while. So there's nothing like reading customer service responses from mental health professionals to put your children to sleep. I'll take all the hate mail on that comment later on if y'all want to, but I've read every one of them, I can assure you. And we've actually compiled, and the customer service report has been approved by the council. It's now out on our website. That's actually a key component of our strategic plan, is that customer service report. So take a look at it. While the comments are so voluminous, I can't include all of them. If you're just dying to see what the individual public comments were, you can submit a public information request and I'll get that to you. But they're not actually in the report itself because it would just be thousands of pages long if I included that. I think it's de-identified too. So if somebody, you don't have to worry about if you wrote something that you wouldn't want out publicly. We've de-identified all that for you. So don't worry about that. We've already talked about strategic planning and LAR preparation. The one thing I will say on the strategic planning is, we also sent out that survey that it was a strategic planning survey where we asked people to provide comments and input on our strategic planning efforts. We got almost 5,000 comments on that as well. I've read every single one of those. I spent my President's Day weekend working on that. I've come up with kind of a breakdown, a summary, if you will. There were a couple of takeaways. I will say this, that survey was truly anonymous. We had geared it and created it so that there is no way you can know who left what comment. There are two things that you learn quickly after submitting an anonymous survey. One, some people are very candid. It provides the freedom for people to be very candid with you. If there's a problem, they're not afraid to identify it. But two, wow, some people really don't hold back whenever you ask for their opinion. Some people have some anger issues too, is what I can tell. But on a more serious note, there were a couple of things that I walked away with after reading both our customer service report and our strategic planning. One, I fully recognize and I agree with everybody that the website needs to be improved. I don't think it's as user-friendly as it needs to be, or I know it's not as user-friendly as it can be. And that's something that I'm going to work on as far, as part of our strategic planning and our LAR. I'm going to be asking the legislature for some help in that. The website you got it's what you get for what the money we had to throw at it, which was nothing, and is basically a product of myself and the HPC web design team, which they did not have a lot of time to dedicate to us. So I recognize it needs improvement. It can be improved, and that is something. We hear you on that. We're working on that. We'll get to that. That's a priority for me. That helps y'all and it helps us as well by reducing workload on the staff. Another thing is the telephone customer service availability. Guys, I'll tell you, we're trying on that one. I know I'm still getting I see a lot of complaints in the survey about, can't call. I'll be honest with you. I don't think that it's as hard to get in touch with us sometimes as people are representing it to be, because I get lots of calls throughout the day from people saying, hey, the receptionists are forwarding calls to me saying, hey, so-and-so needs to talk to you, or, state representatives, senators and stuff like that calling me. So people are getting through to us. Some of the responses seem to reflect attempts in bygone days, when we were first starting up, or even when people were trying to reach out, get in touch over at HHSC. We still have people submitting emails to the old HHSC email addresses and then complaining to us about bounce back or not being able to find stuff on the HHSC website. And I'm like, well, you're looking at the wrong agency for starters. So I know there's still some confusion out there, people not recognizing that BHEC has taken over regulatory control over that. So, and I know that's influencing some of the survey responses. But anyway, that's what we're seeing. One other thing that I have noticed, I'm not sure what to really make of it or what to do with it, but there is a lot of, and I'm not trying to stoke any arguments or discussions here, but there seems to be a lot of distrust between the various professions under the council. I'm seeing a lot of distrust of, maybe for example, if you read the comments, it's between social workers and LPCs and vice versa. The professions feeling like one is trying to horn in on the other scope of practice or territory. And then you see the same thing from psychology as well. I don't see it as much from marriage and family therapy, but it's probably because of the size of that licensee population. And I don't know that this survey is a good measure of that. It may just be as prevalent with them as it is, but I was kind of surprised by that. I always knew that there was some element of that out there, but it shows up pretty prominent in these survey responses. People aren't fussing at the council. They're just saying they feel like, you know, the world is tilted in favor of the other profession, and they want to make sure that other profession doesn't gain control of theirs, which I understand the distinctions between the practices. I get that. And the council is set up to make sure that that one cannot impede on or you know, exert any undue influence or control over the other. So there are built-in statutory and rule safeguards that guard against that. But it just, I guess it had never really struck me as being that prominent in the mindset is when I read these comments. So the next issue I want to talk about is the council has requested an AG opinion. This is something that's really for future issues. What we're doing is we're asking the Attorney General to opine on what the council's authority is. Every 4 years, we have to do something called quadrennial rule review, which is where we go in and we review the rules to make sure that they are still needed, if you will. And a component of that is, what if we go in and we find that a rule isn't needed, it doesn't have any underlying statutory basis, or it's anti-competitive in its effect? What if the council says, well, we can't readopt that rule? So say it's a rule that deals with scope of practice. What do we do if the member board says, well, yeah, but we don't want to change that. We think it's an important component. Now we're at an impasse because the council's saying it can't readopt it, but the member board is saying they don't want to change it. So what do we do? What are our options there? Do we just not readopt the rule in its entirety? That seems pretty drastic, but I don't think the council has the ability to do kind of like line item veto, you know, carve out that offending piece of text. So we're asking the Attorney General, hey, what do we do in that type of a situation? Because I'd rather find out what our authority is now rather than after the legislative session, the 88th legislation has passed and we actually begin our quadrennial review. By then it'll be too late. We'll be stuck. At least we might have an opportunity to correct the problem, you know, in the 88th session by asking for it now. So we've asked for that opinion. I'm not expecting that opinion anytime soon because we just did it back in early February. The only other rules that I'm going to have to hurry, I've gone way over. The only other rules I wanted to point out that are noteworthy, I think, are 882.37, which is, and it was recently adopted and it's now effective, and that's the COVID-19 vaccine passport prohibited. I will share my screen with you real quick so that you can see it. This is it. It's in the council rules. It is 882.37. What it is not a vaccine mandate. It doesn't require people to get vaccines. It doesn't. This is a rule that was promulgated in response to a statute that was passed. This was not something that the council or the member boards came up with on their own and said, here, we're going to impose this regulation on everybody. This is in response to a statute. The rule copies the statute almost verbatim. I would encourage you to look at the rule so that you understand what it does. In short, basically, it means you can't deny services to people based upon their vaccination status. Now, it doesn't say you have to see them in person. So I think you still have the option of saying, well, if you're not vaccinated, I'm only going to see you through telehealth. I think that's still very much a viable option. So read the rule. Don't get too worked up about it. A lot of people either didn't read the rule or they misread it and got really worked up in the comments and were commenting on something that the rule didn't even do. So kind of keep that in mind. Just take a close look at that. The next rule was a product of the Standardization Committee, and that is 884.4. This is really a sister rule to it was really a sister rule to our rule that dealt with complaints involving like child custody evaluations. And what we did in this new rule, 884.4, is we basically said, look, if you're going to file a complaint against a court-appointed therapist or a parenting facilitator, then you can't file the complaint while they're still under appointment. In other words, if you've complained to a judge and the judge hasn't removed them, you can't then come and file a complaint with us while they're still under appointment. And what that does is it keeps people from weaponizing our complaint system against licensees. Because, in all candor, we don't want people to use our complaint system to be able to knock you guys off of court-appointed cases. If you're doing something wrong, the very first person that needs to know about that is the judge, so that he or she can then remove you from the case. You don't come to us, go through our entire complaint process, and then, 6 months after the offending behavior occurs, then we then end up sanctioning you, and then you have to go back and ask the judge. That's a misuse. That's a litigation tactic, and that's not what we're about. We're not here to allow the weaponization of this process. If a party believes that a psychologist or an MFT or a LPC who has been court appointed to provide therapy is doing something wrong, they're not being fair, they're being biased, and whatever the case may be, then you file a motion to have that person replaced or taken off of the appointment. You don't file a complaint with us first. That way, because the judge is really the one that controls who can be an expert and who cannot be an expert. We are not the gatekeeper for experts in litigation. We're just not. And then if the judge does take that individual off of appointment, well, that's a pretty good indication that something bad happened there. And then you can file the complaint with us, and then we can conduct our investigation and sanction that individual if warranted. But this was done, this rule was adopted in hopes that we can kind of head off those things at the past, because we know what we don't want to do is scare people away or be overbearing such that providers don't want to participate in this area where there is a critical need for licensees. So we're trying to make it so that we don't run folks off from being, overbearing, if you will. So that's really all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah so that she can fill in on the social work. So Sarah, take it away for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen as I go through some things to show you. So this is the homepage of the council's webpage. If you slide over here, you can see the 4-member boards, and those are links to specific information each to that board. I'll start with the social work updates. And it's going to take a little second for it to load. Each board has its own board news and other items. And you can see here in recent board news for the social workers that a number of rules became effective yesterday, February 27th. As Daryl pointed out, some of those rules occurred in 881 through 885. And those apply to all 4-member boards and the license types issued by those boards. Those that occurred in Chapter 781 are specific to the social workers. This first one is about the board minutes, which won't have so much to do with the public. But if you're ever looking for the minutes, there's a link here on their minutes meeting dates, agendas, and stuff. And then the social work board will no longer produce minutes, but you can find all of the recordings of the meetings, including all 4-member boards and the council, here on the YouTube channel. So you can scroll over here and see that the social work board met on January 7th. And then if you need an older meeting, you can go back to that and see how that is. So just wanted to let you know about that. Back to board news. In 781, 401, A1B, qualifications for licensure, this adopted change codifies a long-held policy into rule such that hours accrued in non-clinical settings may be used to satisfy the supervised experience requirements for LCSW if the applicant works at least 4 hours per week providing clinical social work as defined in rule. Also, this change removes some obsolete language regarding qualifications for licensed master social workers, advanced practitioner. This license type is no longer issued. However, I've had some questions. Those of you who still hold the LMSW AP, you retain that license type, and other rules such as scope of practice continue to apply to you. It's just that we're no longer issuing that license since 2017. So there was no longer a reason to carry the qualifications for that license in rule. In 781-404, recognition as a council-approved supervisor in the supervision process, down in subsection B11C, that's this here. The adopted change simplifies the requirements that supervision shall occur in proportion to the number of actual hours worked for the required 3,000 hours of supervised experience for LCSW license and towards specialty recognition and independent practice recognition. This change removes some language regarding LMSW AP. In 781-406, required documentation for qualifications for licensure. In C3, language was added to specify the initial and upgrade application. So this excludes that application for reinstatement. If you fail to renew timely and your license goes into a delinquent status and stays in a delinquent status until it expires, so it's been 1 year or more since that original renewal date, then you can no longer renew that license. You have to reinstate it. And so that's a separate process. Just wanted to make you aware of that. In 781-412, examination requirement, C is removed or was removed, so that this new B language extends the time frame for an acceptable Associative Social Worker Board's examination score from 1 to 2 years from the receipt of an initial or an upgrade application. Again, it excludes that application for reinstatement. And it also removes some redundant language. So that's it for some of the board updates. If you want to look through more of these, I'll bring to your attention the preamble gives you some justification for the rule and a little bit more background, and you can find that on board news. If you go back to the council's homepage and down to the right-hand side of the how-to user guides quick link, you can see the user guides up there for how to apply for a license, how to apply for an upgrade or reclassification, how to become a supervisor, how to renew a license. We get a number of questions of, I renewed my license, but I never got my renewal card or permit. And that's correct. We are no longer issuing those automatically. If you need one, then you can order one and just follow the guideline here. And what we're doing instead is providing, again, back to the council's homepage, we're providing an online verification of that license. So your employer or your supervisor needs to verify your license, they can go here and get it online. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Now to, I think this will still share. The Association of Social Work Boards recently released a couple of news articles at their February 25th newsletter. One of them was about the next version of the ASWB exams, which are targeted to go into use in 2025. But what they're doing before that is they are gathering information from the Social Workforce Coalition, which includes entities like NASW, the Council on Social Work Education, and some other organizations that you may belong to or may have heard of. And then they're also gathering what they're calling a community input session. So they're asking for volunteers for those sessions. Once they gather that information, they'll put together a practice analysis task force. And if you'd like to participate in that, there's a form there for you to express your willingness to participate in that. And that will all inform the next social work census. So what will happen is they'll take a census of what is current practice, and then use all of that information to craft the next version of that, of the social work exam. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because those are opportunities for you to participate in ASWB's crafting of the next exam. And I encourage you to participate in that and have your voice heard. Next, I'd like to bring to your attention that ASWB has released an update on the Social Work Compact. This is the multi-state compact effort that's put together by the Department of Defense and the Council on State Government and the Association of Social Work Boards. The first item that they completed was this technical assistance group, which brought together a number of entities to look at each state's regulatory policies and get recommendations from them. The next phase of the product is to draft legislation that will be used as a model and proposed to the different states. And so that drafting team is being gathered together now and will first convene in April. And then similar to our rules, that when we publish our rules, there's some opportunity for public comment. This model legislation will also have an opportunity for public comment. So if you'd like to be a part of that, then please look at ASW's website under their, I just did ASWB News and it came up under Google, and volunteer to be part of that feedback process. So that concludes my update for social work. So I'll move on to the Marriage and Family Therapy Board. And I'm gonna again go back to our board news webpage. So again, from the homepage, I can get to the Marriage and Family Therapy link and the board news specific to marriage and family therapy. And on March 10th, the Marriage and Family Therapy Board will have insights over the lunch hour, but not with executive staff, but with board members. So that's on the webpage. It's again on March 10th at the noon hour, and you can click on that link there for the registration information. Similarly, there's also been new rules effective February 27th. Daryl has already gone over the highlights for the rules in chapters 881 to 885 that apply to all the member boards. So if you want to look at more of those information, they're there. And then chapter 801 is specific to the marriage and family therapists. The first one was a change in definition in 15 and 16, and all this did was align the definition of licensed marriage and family therapist and licensed marriage and family therapist associate to that definition that's in statute. So it's just referring you back to the definition in statute. And for all of you out there who are an LMFT associate or a supervisor of an LMFT associate, please note that LMFTA is not an appropriate abbreviation for that. It makes the board members cringe when you come to a board meeting and introduce yourself as an LMFTA, so just public service announcement for that. The other big news that I'd like to bring to your attention is in chapter 801, sub.74, application to take licensure exam. This rule has been reduced to one sentence, and that's to allow us to streamline that process. So if you've been, oops, I can't find my mouse. If you've been subscribing to email updates, you would have gotten an email message in your inbox that explained to you that beginning tomorrow, can you all see I don't know if it's still showing the website or if you can see that the message. Okay.
Yes.
So starting tomorrow, March 1st, when an applicant for LMFT associate submits an online application for license, the confirmation email that is sent back by the online system will include that applicant's exam authorization code. And so that applicant can immediately use that exam authorization code to schedule their exam with AMFTRB. Still, all of the other things that are required for an associate license, they still apply, but we're not gonna ask you for all of that before we issue that exam code. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, that will speed up the exam process. But if you don't submit all the other information, then you'll have, at some point in time while you're passing the exam, then might have some delay responding to a deficiency notice before that associate license can be issued. So that's a big change, and I think a huge improvement to our processes here. Also wanted to bring your attention, when you're submitting an application, that confirmation email also includes the fingerprint agency code, and you need that code in order to complete your fingerprint process. If you don't use our agency code, we can't access the reports. So pay attention to that confirmation email on several levels, read through it carefully. So I think that concludes my updates to social work and to MFT. Thank you.
Great. I'm Diane Moore. I'm the board administrator for the Psychology Board, and we recently had a newly adopted language for Rules 465.13 for professional problems, conflicts, and dual relationship. And here, this rule just further clarifies when a licensee must withdraw from a professional relationship if another relationship exists that it is likely to cause harm or impair a licensee's objectivity, and to always keep the best interests of your clients, in the forefront when treating their clients. So this rule change was effective February 27th of 22. And the next rule that we have newly adopted language is 463.11 regarding supervised experience required for licensure as a psychologist. Now, in this amendment, it allows applicants to petition the board if they have a deficiency in their supervised experience. So if they do have a deficiency and meet the criteria of the rule, then they can make a petition to remediate the deficiency, as long as it does not conflict with any applicable laws or adversely affect the public welfare. So the criteria that's outlined in the rule is the applicant must have completed at least 1,500 hours of supervised experience in a formal internship, obtained a doctoral degree in psychology, completed at least 1,500 hours of supervised experience following the conferral of a doctoral degree. And they will also need to obtain passing scores for all prerequisites exams, such as jurisprudence and the EPPP. Now, if an applicant has not met the minimum requirements, then they are not eligible to submit a petition outlined in this amended rule. So these changes are going into effect on March the 2nd of 2022. Other rules that the board has submitted for proposed language to the council at its February meeting was Rule 465.35 regarding professional development. And they're recommending a repeal and replace to reconstruct the rule so it's more in alignment with the continuing education standardization format that all member boards are looking to adopt. Some of the changes that are listed in this rule are a maximum of 10 hours carryover per renewal cycle. A licensee would now be able to attain 1 hour credit for CE for retaking the jurisprudence exam, and they can earn 1 hour of CE for self-study. The board agreed to maintain the minimum requirements of at least 6 hours of CE for both ethics and cultural diversity. In addition to those recommended changes, Rule 470.1, Schedule of Sanctions, there were amendments to kind of coincide with some of the changes in that professional development language. Some of the upcoming activities the board is looking at is revisiting the proposed language for 463.12 regarding a temporary license. And the board is looking to address the minimum qualifications to obtain a temporary license. And the board is also looking at updating the guidelines for the practice of telepsychology. And they're looking to update the terminology to make the document more relevant to today's practice. In addition, under Rule 463.8 regarding licensed psychological associates, the board is looking to add some proposed language that will allow an applicant to remediate deficiencies as well. That's all I have for you today. I will now turn it over to Christina for LPC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. Sarah did an awesome job on showing you guys some information on the website. I wanted to just point you guys to a couple other things. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is the main BHEC website, and a couple other things I wanted to just make sure, and I know we've done this in the past, but anybody new that might be on the Zoom meeting today. So this is the main BHEC website, right? On the right-hand side, very bottom, we have all these different links here that you can go to. At the very bottom, the last two that I wanted to show you guys was the email updates. I know the majority of you probably have signed up for this if you are on this Zoom meeting, but please share this information, because anybody new coming in, students right now, we need to really just continue to share this information as much as possible. And the best way for us to get this information to you all is you guys signing up for email updates. It is super, super easy to do. Your name, your email, which program you want information on. So again, share that information, and we'd greatly appreciate that. The other thing is as we've said in the past, and again, just anybody new on here, if you for some reason receive a deficiency or fail to attach one of the documents for the application, you will not open a new application to provide us with that new document. You will go to the main BHEC website. On the right hand side, very bottom, it says contact us. When you go here, you'll go down just a little bit, email us. And then this is their specific programs here. If it's an open records request, anything here will get this to the correct person that it needs to go to. So you can attach documents here. You choose the file, attach it there, and it'll get sent to the staff member who needs that. So that will expedite any deficiencies or any questions that you have. Using this form is what we request everyone to continue to use. Let me see, I think I had just a couple other things on the website. So again, like Sarah said, this is the main BHEC website. We have all the independent boards here for you guys to access. We have tried to put everything that's on the BHEC website on each individual board as well for easy access for you all. I'm going to go to LPC, and the big thing I wanted to make sure you guys knew is board news. And Sarah did touch base on this for the other boards, but the board news, this is where we're going to tell you guys when there's any changes going on. It'll take you to the rule. Just continue to monitor this, and you'll stay in the know of what's going on. I do like that we have these lunch hour meetings, because I do see a lot of emails or Q&As coming through asking about the rules. So I think, as we've seen, you guys do really enjoy having this opportunity to meet with us. The last thing I wanted to just make sure and make note, and Sarah did, and this for licensing updates, Sarah did point out in a little bit for the fingerprinting. So anybody who is an initial applicant, you will get an email back to you that says what you need to do, what those steps are, what that code is. So just make sure after you complete that initial online application, check your email. You're going to have I think it's called like a summary, an application summary. It's going to be within that wording that's there for you have to read it to find it. So make sure you're paying attention to that and going back to, to make sure and do what you need to do. Let's see. And I did see a couple questions on the FAQ also that asking about the fingerprinting, if you've done it with another agency or whatnot for a different license. Unfortunately, we cannot use those other fingerprints that you've done in the past. You will have to get it completed with BHEC. This keeps it in our database, and it continues to stay with us. You only have to do it one time with BHEC, but you do have to do it with us. We will not be able to pull it from a different agency or license that you obtained somewhere else. Related to board updates, so the LPC board is still, in support of the counseling compact. Right now, we still have to wait for a sponsor to pick it up. That's going to hopefully happen in the next session, which is in 2023. So there's a little bit of, time between there. The LPC board did discuss in their last meeting. They have come up with a counseling compact committee who will kind of just be keeping an eye on things that are going on, looking at what our rules are, comparing it to draft rules, maybe meeting with other boards and seeing what they're working on or whatnot. So it's something that the LPC board is definitely interested in. We just can't do anything right now. We have to wait for that to get picked up during legislative session. So next I'm going to go to the rules. The big thing that I see a lot of comments on, and we've received some emails on, rules 681.2, 681.91, and 681.93. Those relate to the LPC associates owning a business and being able to bill for services. Those were posted February 18th in the Texas Register for final adoption and became effective yesterday, February 27th. So to clarify this, an LPC associate may both bill clients and own a business, but the LPC associate cannot practice independently. They must still be under supervision of a board-approved supervisor, and that supervisor must agree to the supervisor requirements that are found in 681.93. So if you look at the definition under 681.2, number 13, the board clarified there what independent practice is. Independent practice is practice providing professional counseling services to a client without the supervision of an LPC supervisor. Again, LPC associates have to be under an approved LPC board supervisor. They cannot practice independently, but they can own the business. I hope that was clear, but if not, we'll touch on it a little bit more. And a couple other things. So on February 11th, the LPC board adopted rules that were will be reviewed by the council on May 18th. And those related to 681.6 related to the minutes. The whole section was repealed. We will be moving 100% to Zoom recordings. And then the other 681.205 related to schedule of sanctions. What we did there is we removed the language that was in the schedule of sanctions. So it still has the citation numbers and the proposed disciplinary action in there. It's just removing the language. Anytime that we had a rule change and it was identified there, we had to correct that rule as well. So it's just going to be easier, but all the important information is still there for you guys to access. And then the last thing is on February 11th, the LPC board approved proposed language related to the continuing education requirements. This will also be reviewed by the council at the May 18th meeting. This relates to the rule 681.140. And what this is the board consolidated all the continuing education requirements into one single rule. This will require 3 hours of cultural diversity or competency. The JP will become optional, but if taken, can be used as 1 hour of ethics. And the licensees will be able to claim up to 1 hour of self-study, continuing education credit. Now, again, these last ones are still in the process. These are not effective. The only thing that became effective were the 681.2, the 681.91, and the 681.93 became effective yesterday. Other than that, the board is continuing to try and see how they can also complete one of these lunch hour meetings for just the LPC board. And we hopefully will have that in the next couple of months. But if you sign up for email alerts, you'll get that information on when that meeting will be. And that's all I have.
I guess that's back to me now. I'm sorry, I was answering questions in the Q&A there. Okay, well, with that, Patrick, Tim, did you guys have anything that you wanted to add? Okay.
I didn't have anything to add.
All right, with that, I think we ought to just take this opportunity now to open it up.
While you're looking at that, if I could share, there's in the Q&A a question about practicing over state lines. So if you are in Texas and hold a Texas license, rules in Chapter 882 refer you to Title 3 of the Texas Occupations Code, Chapter 113, and it allows for the use of telemedicine or telehealth service to a patient who is located outside of this state, subject to any applicable regulation or jurisdiction in which the patient is located. So check with the jurisdiction where your patient is located. If they're traveling from New York to Massachusetts to Louisiana and then back home again over the next 3 months, you need to know what jurisdiction they're going to be in when they receive services, and you're going to need to comply with not only Texas rules, because that's where you are and that's where your license is, but also with that jurisdiction's rules.
Exactly. And I'm going to, so that I can kind of finish my thought, I'd started answering a question over in the Q&A. It's Priscilla Kadimi Kalantari. You had asked, is there still a limit for telehealth counseling hours for MFT, or has that been open? Has that been open now due to COVID? I think what you're referring to is that 500-hour cap for telehealth hours that can be used as part of your supervised experience towards full licensure as an MFT. That cap is still in the rules. It never was changed. However, the MFT board did adopt Rule 801.205. It's called a remedy for incomplete license requirements. And it's kind of a workaround. So if you were during the pandemic, if you were prevented from seeing patients in person by your employer and you could only do telehealth, it's kind of unfair to say, well, but you can only count 500 hours of that when you were being forced to do telehealth and not in person. So you can actually get some relief under this newly adopted rule 801.205, remedy for incomplete license requirements. And basically what it says is you can petition for relief if you were forced to do all your therapy. There you go. Sarah's got it up there for you. If you were forced to do all of your services via telehealth as a result of a gubernatorial declared pandemic or disaster. So there is a workaround for that for folks that have more than 500 hours and they need that for their full licensure. You can get some relief under this rule. So take a look at that. And then I think with that, I'm going to open it up. We will let you guys ask us questions here. So if you've got a question and you're appearing via computer, just use the raise hand feature and I'll get to y'all. And then later on, once we've kind of worked through all of those, I'll start going down the phone lines to see if people who have dialed in have any questions. So let's start out with Natalie Jackson. Ms. Jackson, do you have something you need to ask? Do you have a question for us?
Sorry, I must have pressed something accidentally. I had a question that I typed in and I think it was responded to.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Not a problem.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay. Nicole Fryer, do you have a question for us?
Yes. I have one and then a quick one.
Okay.
Last year, I renewed my license and did the fingerprints. How can I ensure that my fingerprints are on file so that I don't have to submit them again?
Okay. Was your license renewed?
Yes, sir. So I renewed in 2023.
Okay, so you did it in 2021.
Yes, sir.
You should. I mean, we would not have. I'm trying to think. Let's see. We started the fingerprinting in what, March of 2021. So
I renewed in May.
Okay, you're fine then. We wouldn't have renewed your license if we didn't have your prints.
Okay.
So if we renewed your license, that means we got your fingerprint report back and everything was fine. So
okay.
You won't have to do it again.
Okay, that's a duh, right? Okay.
It's all right.
You're kind of funny, by the way. Some of the things you said, I was cracking up.
Funny or funny looking? Now, those are two different things.
Funny.
So
humorous,
okay.
Funny, humorous. And what is that legislative code that Miss Sarah brought up about the telehealth across state lines, so I can look that up for myself?
Sarah, you're on mute.
Okay, let's try again. It's in Title 3 of the Texas Occupations Code, Chapter 113.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Ms. Fryer?
No, sir. Thank you so much.
You bet. You bet. Aisha Holman, do you have a question for us?
Can you hear me now? Hi there, I do.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is regarding the new rule that allows LPC associates to own and operate a practice and bill. As an LPC supervisor, the language under the supervisor has not changed with our level of responsibility towards them. And so me just processing this out a little bit, am I now responsible for their practice, for all of their forms, to make sure those are correct, to make sure they're billing properly? Am I like helping them build a practice now?
No, actually the language has changed on the supervisor responsibility. We tightened it up so that you didn't have to, you're not taking over responsibility for their business practice. Now, what is in the forms, that's going to be part of the practice of counseling. So yeah, you're going to need to oversee that. But as far as, you know, what business entity they choose, whether they pay their franchise taxes on time, you're not responsible for any of that. Whether their building is ADA compliant, that's not part of your deal. You're there just to make sure that what they're doing is correct as far as the practice of counseling.
There was a line underneath the supervisor's portion that said we are responsible. Well, it did say that the LPC associate and the supervisor are both responsible for ... And then further down in that same sentence, it says we are responsible for, or we could be, I'm just going to use the word cited. I forget the real word there, but we could be cited or held responsible for something we should have known. That's very vague.
So it says now that the LPC supervisor may only be subject to disciplinary action for violations that relate to professional practice of counseling committed by the LPC associate, which the LPC supervisor knew about or due to an oversight of the supervisory relationship that the supervisor should have known about.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you're not doing your due diligence, and let's say you're just charging somebody for supervision and you're never checking up on them, you should have known. If they do something naughty, you should have known about it. And in that case, you can be held responsible if they misdiagnose or something like that. But I mean, if you're doing everything you're supposed to do as a supervisor, you know, you're checking in on them, you're making sure you're doing consultations with them, you're doing what a good supervisor is supposed to do. If they screw something up, then that doesn't fall back on you under the way this new rule works.
Okay. I just and thank you so much for taking the time and hosting the meeting. I should have said that starting off. But okay, it just makes us feel very uncomfortable. And when I say us, I'm part of a Texas supervisory support group where we kind of chat about our associates and how to do what to do and, you know, just support each other. And there are a lot of people now who are considering stopping supervision and even not taking on, you know, just stopping supervision altogether because of, you know, that increased liability. So a lot of supervisors are very afraid, just FYI, guys. A lot of people are very afraid of the liability risk now.
Well, let me be clear. You don't have to do this. You can choose not to. And so that fear, I don't think is well-founded, is kind of where I'm coming from, because just don't do it. If you're not comfortable with that LPC associate, you know, owning their own practice, don't do it. And you can still continue on as a supervisor. So just, you know, make sure any response you have is kind of measured within the scope of what the text of the rule. We don't want to run anybody off. We actually tried to make sure that there was kind of a more measured approach in the rules. When we looked at the rules, we felt like it was almost strict liability before the changes. If your supervisor did anything wrong, you were on the hook for it. And so we wanted to kind of back that off and only make you guys hold you responsible for what you knew or what you should have known, and to limit it to just what is going on within the practice of counseling. And if you get some cowboy on the other end that wants to not pay his franchise tax, or, you know, do something stupid with his own business, then you're not on the hook for that. They're grown men and women.
Right. Well, I appreciate the information. Just that's from the perspective of somebody out here in the field. We are not in your seat where you guys create, write, talk about these things all the time. So just from us who are reading it and trying to understand and interpret, you know, just FYI.
Understood. Gotcha.
The current language, I just want to clarify, it's under 681.93, B as in boy. So if you haven't looked at the new wording, that's where you can find it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you,
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. Sharice, did you have a question for us? Sharice, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
And I definitely appreciate this meeting. So I am wondering, when it comes to supervision over state lines, as far as social workers, are we able to do that? Oh,
Yeah.
Sarah, you're muted again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was typing to the Q&A.
Okay.
Your license and your supervisor status stops at the Texas border. You are only authorized to practice and supervise while you were in Texas and while the client is in Texas. So if your supervisee is wanting to do telemedicine in Arkansas, your supervisee must comply with Texas rules and with Arkansas rules. And if Arkansas requires them to have a supervisor to practice, then they have to have likely an Arkansas supervisor. You'd have to see what the Arkansas rules are. And I'm hoping to see Attorney Patrick and Daryl and Tim nod on this. So
that's right. You're right.
The language isn't, thank you, Tim. The language isn't really written in statute or in rules about all about this, Texas, because it's presumed that you're doing this practice in Texas. As more telemedicine gets going, there might be more clarifications popping up in the actual statute or in the actual rules, but presume that you can only practice in Texas.
Okay. And that's even with like traveling social workers. The social worker is licensed in Texas, but she travels for work
outside of the state.
Outside of the state.
So her Texas license only authorizes her to practice in Texas.
Okay.
Now there are other jurisdictions, such as a federal jurisdiction for perhaps veteran affairs facilities, military bases. And that's a separate jurisdiction than the Texas jurisdiction. So I can't say that if I'm working for the VA that they travel from a VA facility in Dallas to another VA facility in, I don't know, Virginia, outside of Texas, then that federal jurisdiction may allow them to practice as long as they hold a license from some state. But your Texas license only authorizes you to practice in Texas.
Okay. And what about, is there a cap for social work supervision via telehealth like it is in LPC?
I'd have to refresh my memory on it. My recollection, and I hate to rely on that, is that it is to be used judiciously, and that the social work board stresses clear communication between the supervisor and the supervisee, and that so I don't know that there's any particular number of hours specified in rule. It's up to the good judgment of the supervisor.
There are no caps in the social work or the LPC rules on the amount of telehealth services you can deliver.
Thank you.
What the rules really speak to is they just want to make sure that you're competent in the delivery of those services, and this is true across all the boards. I'm not aware of any cap on the amount of telehealth services anyone can provide. There is that 500-hour cap in the MFT rules, but that's 500. That they only let you use 500 hours when you're applying for licensure. In theory, you could do more than that. You just couldn't use more than that 500. But there are no caps for the fully licensed providers to do telehealth. What the board's rules say is we just want to make sure that you're competent in what you're doing and that your patients understand what they're getting into whenever they get telehealth services, because it's, everybody needs to know how to use the technology. Everybody needs to be able to trust that it's going to stay confidential. And you need to make sure that that format is an appropriate format for the particular patient and whatever the trouble or the needs of that patient are. Some needs may not lend themselves to telehealth as much as others. Now, the pandemic has shown us that a lot can be done, probably more than what we ever thought could be done via telehealth. But those are just kind of the probably your natural inclinations as a provider. You're thinking of all this stuff already.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Let's see. Shadonna Williams, did you have a question for us?
Yes, actually, not really a question. Well, I do have a question, but also a comment. The agency has been, I mean, your council board have been answering the phone, so, and everyone has been extremely, extremely knowledgeable and very nice. So I definitely want to thank you guys so much for that.
Thank you.
And I don't hold forever like the way you used to be. And then also, my question is for Ms. Diane. As a social worker, I have a social worker that is pursuing a doctoral degree in psychology. So for licensing, who do we reach out to if we have any questions to make sure that we're on the right path with getting licensure?
If you have questions, you can always use the contact us link, and you can, so if the individual is seeking a psychology licensure, you can address that to the psychology board and list your specific question, and we can address it that way.
Okay, and we just call that the regular number, the 1-800 number?
Use the contact us link is the better route to use. So when you're on our homepage for the council, the lower right, on the last link there on the bulleted list is a contact us link. If you click on there, and then scroll down, there's an email us, and then you can address which board or the nature of your question. There's a category listing to select from, and you can state your specific questions in there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Let's see. Miss Diaz, do you have a question for us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for holding this much needed meeting for all of us. More than anything, I have two comments. I have been a supervisor for many years, and I have seen changes which allow us to supervise adequately and with quality. And I have seen the change to where now we don't have a limit as to how many LPC associates we can supervise. In my experience, it takes time, effort, emotional investment, and academic to prepare them to be great professionals. So I would like to know if you're going to revisit that and maybe cap a number of associates that we can supervise so that we can really focus on those associates. Before we used to have a cap of 8. Now we don't. I would like for that to be revisited. I also teach the 40-hour course for clinical supervision, and I do enhance that part of the responsibility as a gatekeeper, and also fulfilling all the responsibilities as supervisors. That was one. The second one is on our code. It says that we need to visit with our LPC associates 4 times, for minimum of 4 hours a month. I have seen where supervisors wait until the end of the month to meet with them. And to me, it's very, very important to meet with my supervisees after every 40 hours or once a week. I think if we make that more clear, then they will be more responsible for whatever the supervisees are working on. Depending on their model, I use the discrimination model, and it's very important to have that kind of either whether I'm a consultant, as a teacher, or as a counselor, to have that connection every 40 hours or once a week with my my interns, but some supervisors take it as, oh, for minimum 4 hours a month, I'm gonna wait till the end of the month to meet with them for 4 hours. So I think we need to be more specific as far as our level of responsibility, because our level of responsibility, it is to the interns, but it's much more to the client, that they're providing adequately those services to their clients. And so those are my two questions, I guess, to Christina.
Yes, so I mean, I will definitely propose this back to the board. They made the change a few years back about the number of licensees that supervisors can have, to no longer have a limit, but I can definitely bring that to their attention and see if that's something that they want to revisit, and you know, go from there.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, I'm not aware of any complaints or anything arising out of that. Arising out of this. And I guess my question to you is I'm not seeing a problem on our end. I mean, are you seeing something? Are you seeing people, I guess, harmed as a result of this decision to hold supervision off to the end of the month?
Well, not necessarily anything that comes out on your page, but I do see how the level of supervision is not, the quality is not there. I see it locally. This is South Texas. Mm-hmm. And so I do see how the quality is not there. And I would like to think that all of us are meeting weekly to be able to adequately prepare clinicians, again, because we don't have so many, an abundance of clinicians in our area. We are very much willing to sometimes put aside our hat as a gatekeeper and be able to sign off on very adequately prepared clinicians. So as far as something formal, no. But I can see how we do need more quality of supervision, and that can only be done if we put a cap on that number.
Yeah, you're gonna run into situations where when you set a cap like that, you're gonna run into situations where different supervisors are capable of handling different amounts, and you get into accusations. Well, it's an arbitrary cap. You don't have anything to support how you arrived at that particular number. And, you know, I get what you're saying about everybody lumping their supervision towards the end of the month. I understand what you're saying there. But right. One of the things we've learned one of the good things about BHEC is we're able to look at all the 4 boards and see what works best under a particular board. And like social workers had kind of this formulaic approach to supervision. They had a very, very rigid formula for proportionality. You have to do X amount of supervision per amount of supervised experience, and then they wanted it done. It got very down in the weeds, and it becomes very difficult to administer both from the supervisor's perspective and from our perspective. And in fact, we're backing off of that on the supervision side for social workers. So in other words, they're moving more towards what y'all have right mm-hmm. now, because it's worked better for the LPCs than it has over there. That's my concern with that. I hear what you're saying. I get it. I see what you're talking about. Right. I'm just talking about from a very practical stance of you can get away with that kind of stuff when you have much smaller licensee populations, but you guys are 30 plus thousand. And our application volume for LPCs is, I mean, thousands of applications a year. And so we have to try to manage what, you know, we have to kind of take that into account when we're setting that. We don't want to make it really hard on supervisors, because if we make it like what Ms. Holman talked about earlier, if we set it too hard on you guys, you're like, well, I don't want any part of this. I'm out. Well, now we've screwed up and we've overregulated you to the degree that nobody wants to do it. Right. You know, so I mean, all that stuff has to be kind of balanced and weighed out. And it's like watching sausage get made, unfortunately. But that I hear you though. I understand what you're saying. We'll definitely visit with the Rules Committee about that at our next Rules Committee meeting. You bet. You bet. And you know, guys, I want everybody to understand that when I'm talking with y'all, and I just want y'all. I try to be kind of, here's my cards on the table. Whenever I hear somebody, I don't want you to think that I'm ever fussing at you or, you know, being dismissive. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just, I sometimes I just want to make sure y'all understand kind of where we're coming from also. That's why this is a back and forth like it is. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to talk back and forth so that y'all understand where we're coming from on why some of these rules were done the way they were done. And then it also gives y'all a fair opportunity to go, well, that idea stinks, Daryl, and here's why. So, I mean, that's a fair back and forth, but just understand that I'm not fussing at anybody if I question y'all or, you know, push back on these types of things. I just trying to make sure y'all understand where we're coming from, kind of how we see it from the administrator's perspective. All right, Mr. Perez, do you have a question for us?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse for a second. Yes, sir. My name is Gregory Perez. I work at Joint Base San Antonio as a counselor. So with the current crisis, of course, we've had an increase in personal traveling outside the state and even overseas. So if we have the ability, and that means, I know it means if I have to look at what that current contiguous like state says, right? Can I see my clients, and then how long will I have that ability for? I know I would probably want to hand over my clients if they stay there longer than a couple of months, maybe. But
now,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
Will this allow me to see clients for like a transition time of, let's say, a month or 2 months in order to get them into other services somewhere else?
You said you were working on the base in San Antonio?
Yes, sir.
Are you a private contractor with the
yes, sir,
with the Air Force or the Army? I don't.
With the Army.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you work on base?
Yes, sir. I work on base.
Okay, and you're dealing with just strictly a military population. Your folks who are being moved here and abouts throughout the country.
Either military or military family members, or even some DoD civilians, depending on the issues.
Okay. The military service members, that's clearly within the federal purview. So that's you're basically, I don't think the same rules are going to apply in that situation, because it's almost like you're already working in a foreign country with your Texas license. So I think you're all right there. Mm-hmm. Where it gets a little stickier is like the military families. That, you know, it's really going to depend on what the jurisdiction says where those individuals are located, is really what it's going to hinge on. And they may not have the wiggle room like the month transition time that you're talking about. They may not allow you to do that. Some do. Some say, well, you can practice here for up to 30 days before you're required to actually get a license. Mm-hmm. And then some don't, like us. We don't have that kind of a buffer, if you will. So I really can't answer that question. The fact that you're a contractor and not an actual federal employee also adds a funky little twist to it.
Yeah.
You know, under psych board, if you were a psychologist, the fact that you're a contractor would mean that your activities or services would not be exempt. You would be treated as though you were just practicing off base. It gets really strange, really twisted, really quick here. So I'm not sure I can answer your question here. I know for the families and for the civilian employees or contractors, you're going to have to check with that jurisdiction where they're located. I don't have a good answer for you there. Not the one you want to hear, but you're going to have to check with that jurisdiction. For the service members, that's something we could probably talk a little bit more about offline.
Thanks, sir. I'll see if I can send you an email.
Yeah, shoot me an email. I'll give you a call.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Holman.
Yep, I'm back. Thank you so
All right.
much. Quick question on applying for licensure in a different state. There's a form, you know, all the states have their forms. There's forms that we need to be verified by the board for us. And I don't know why they just can't go onto our licensing board and see the stuff that's listed. That would be easy, but they don't make it easy for us. So I did go onto the BHEC website. I clicked whatever the link is to send you guys an email, uploaded the form. What's the process though on getting those things back? I don't know if you guys use your own central form and say, this is what we need, or if we should do what I did, which is I pre-filled out most of the form that the other state gave me and I uploaded it to the website, and now what?
You actually have to mail it in to us with a check for $50, because what you're doing is you're asking us to provide verification directly to that other jurisdiction. We actually have a...
They actually want you to send it back to me, not to them, because they want theirs all in one packet. They will not accept, and many states are like this, they will not accept them in pieces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can do that too. I mean, we can send it to you if you want. You'll just have to put that in the letter to us, in the cover letter, saying send it directly to me and not to the jurisdiction. We can do that. Now, we actually have our own forms for that, but some jurisdictions won't accept ours. They want it on their own form, which that's fine. But you have to mail that in to us with the check for $50. Now, here's where it gets, we can actually, Tim, Patrick, we have the verification. We have a verification form for folks that if we're not sending it directly to the jurisdiction, and it's like $10 or $15, I think, if I'm remembering right. And we send that directly to the licensee. But I think we do something different for the direct verification to the state. I think we actually there's a seal or something. I think an embossed seal that we put on it that's different from the verification we send direct. Are they needing, Dr. Holman, are they needing an embossed seal on it? Is that what they're needing?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
There is a space in this particular form that does ask for a stamp or a seal or something.
Okay. Yeah. You're going to have to send it. It's the $50 fee then. I was trying to figure out if I could get you down to like the $10 or $15 fee.
Okay.
But yeah, you're going to have to send that form in to us with the check made out to BHEC, and then put in the letter, hey, send it back to me. Don't send it to them. That way we know to ship it directly to you.
Yes, that is in the letter. It's actually written on their form. It's there. Just a quick question. I could have overlooked it, but is there a place on the new website that gives us instructions on how to request those things? Because I was looking and I didn't see anything. Where's...
Those are our actual forms right there. I don't know that we've got an FAQ. Tim, do we have an FAQ on if you want to submit another jurisdiction's forms?
Not at this point.
Okay, we probably ought to talk about, let's put that on our agenda for our licensing meeting, and we'll see if we can't put something on the FAQs about that. Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll see if we can't fix that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right. Ms. Yandy Edmondson, do you have a question for us?
Hi, thank you. I thought I was having some technical difficulties, but maybe not. This is a different type of Zoom meeting that I've never attended this type of Zoom meeting before. So yeah. I thought I was having some technical problems, but I guess not. First of all, I live here in California and I'm newly licensed in Texas as of last year. So I do want to make sure that everyone knows that I just think you guys, the board there is awesome, especially in comparison to here in California. You cannot get anybody on the phone. You cannot get emails responded to. So not trying to be negative, but I just needed to acknowledge and recognize that my experience from beginning to end of getting licensed in Texas was fantastic. Victoria Skiff was just she's a phenomenal human being. It was easy to get in touch with her via email, if I asked to talk to her, she would call me. Just kudos, A+++. Here you have to drive up to Sacramento, and I live outside of San Diego if you want to get anything done. And I've lived here over 20 years, but my plan is to relocate to Texas, which is why I got licensed in Texas. Oh, no. So kudos to your entire team.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So one of the questions I had, and it was answered, I think, but I want a little more information about the CEU requirements there, because now I am licensed in 3 states. And the question was answered, but I do want to understand a little more, need to be a little clearer in terms of the CEU requirement. I know there's specific requirements, and I am a social worker. I didn't tell you that, I apologize. So I want to know if do you have a list of providers? Because I am new to being licensed in Texas. Is there a list of approved providers? I don't want to have to take more courses than necessary. And again, because I'm new to this process in Texas, I want to understand if I take NASW courses, are they going to be acceptable? Because I'm not one to wait until the last minute to do my CEUs. I've been a social worker for well over 21, 22 years, but I just want to be clear. I don't like to wait until the last minute to do anything. So that's my first question.
Yeah, we don't have a list of approved providers. We no longer approve providers. We just set out in the rules what your CEU hours have to meet, and then we leave it up to you to find a provider that meets those requirements. It's not complicated. The rules are not overly difficult to read and apply. And it should become a little bit simpler once the standardized CE rule is adopted. Hopefully it will be. It should become a little bit easier.
Typically, if you're getting your CEUs from NASW or something like that, they will be just fine here. Or if you're getting them from your state association in California, we'll accept those as well. We are not. We want to make sure that people get their continuing education, but we're not in the business of approving particular providers anymore. So we want to say what the education should do, not who gets to do it.
Okay, that's good to know. My second question and my final question is, again, because I am newly licensed in Texas and I have been on the website, but I would like to be able to understand if coming in new to being licensed in Texas, is there a particular place on the website, or can you give me directions any place else where I can look at, I can go through all the rules. Is there anything else that I should know about in terms of just understanding all the expectations in Texas?
About renewal processes or?
Renewal, being live, anything, any and everything. Other than that website, is there anything else I need to, to make it an overview or to make it simple?
Go ahead, Daryl.
I was just going to say, download the rule book for your applicable profession. We've got the PDF versions of that. Download that. That becomes your Bible. Use that. And then the FAQs, we're trying to, populate our FAQs with the most common questions we get. So do that. I would recommend you sign up for those email updates that I think Sarah or Christina had talked about. Over there on the right-hand side of the screen, it'll say email updates. Get signed up to that, because we tell you when the board meetings are. We broadcast all of our board meetings. We put them on YouTube so you can watch it if you can't watch it live. I encourage you to stay abreast of that, because that's where you'll see a lot of the rule changes debated and discussed. So
yeah, I am signed up for that, and that's another compliment I will give to your board, because there is no such thing here in California. We don't know when the meetings are. We don't get emails. So another compliment. You guys are on top of things there. From what I can see thus far, and I am a real organized person, and getting the emails has been helpful to me. I like knowing what's going on, and I appreciate that as well. Where is the YouTube? How do I access the YouTube channel? Is it just under BH?
No, I think I actually provided a link to it in the Q&As. There's somebody else had asked that. If you just go on YouTube and Google our name, or not Google, but search for our name, our channel should pop up.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't have anything else other than I just appreciate this meeting. I really do. I mean, to come in new, to be licensed in another state, and just to be able to meet the board is just, it's pretty amazing, I have to tell you. I'm going to be bragging about Texas to a lot of people. And I was born and raised in Oklahoma. So to be able to come there and be close to family, and you guys are doing it right. I just can't say enough good things about you so far. I know you're probably not perfect. No, but none of us are. But I see you. I see what you're doing, and I see that you communicate with us. And I just, kudos, just kudos.
Thank you.
Stick around long enough. Stick around long enough. I'm sure I'll screw something up you can throw a rock at me about. So
No, I won't do that. I will approach it in a professional and constructive manner.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, Miss Montel. I hope I don't know if I got your last name right.
Yes, I'm interested in what the process is. I heard someone from a rural community say that if they want the arresting officer to take a suspect to hospital instead of jail, are there forms to make that happen if they call an LPC? Or should an LPC be ready with forms for if that were to happen? Or does the police take care of that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember that coming up earlier in our discussion. Are you talking about like an involuntary commitment? Is that what we're talking about?
Or like a DWI?
Well, I don't know how voluntary or involuntary it would be in the moment, but my understanding is that the LPC has the authority to, in a sense, order an arresting officer to take his prisoner to a hospital instead of to jail. Do we have that?
That's not anything in our rules. I'll tell you, I don't know. The answer to that question is I don't know. If Tim, one of the others, knows, they can shut me up. I don't know. That's probably going to be a question you're going to need to talk to the county attorney in whatever county you're located in.
Okay.
They're going to have more knowledge about who can order an involuntary commitment. I just don't know.
Okay.
That's way outside of our wheelhouse as the regulatory agency. And
great.
So sorry, I can't help you with that one.
Okay. I know where to go with my question. And I echo, it's just amazing to see what Texas has done over the last few years. And this forum is a wonderful opportunity to make you accessible to the people. And I really want to thank you for that also.
You bet. You bet. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, Christina.
Daryl.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions on here asking about the link to the continuing education and stuff. Do you want to explain how that'll be done? Because there are people dropping off because they have sessions, et cetera.
The link to it's you have to complete the survey at the end of the session.
Okay.
I don't know if the survey pops up when they drop off, they can take the survey and complete it. Whoever completes the survey is where we get the email addresses that we're going to use to send the CE certificates to. Otherwise, I have no way of knowing who is basically completed the 1 hour, if you will.
So if they drop off early, are they out of luck?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, unless the survey pops up.
It's the first time we've tried it.
Yeah, this is the first time we're trying this. So, and I think. I don't know. I don't know if it'll pop up. I'm not sure if it will. So
yeah, since we're going over, a lot of people are starting to freak.
Okay.
Say, hey, I've got clients, etc. Understand.
Okay. Well, yeah, understandable. All right, let's see. Christina Delholm, do you have a question for us?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I do. I am a LMFT supervisor as well as an LPC supervisor. And so one of my associates has a company that she partners with doing like EAP type of work, and their business is super progressive in that they require all of their new employees to do a couple sessions with her just to help them with the onboarding and stuff like that. That being said, the company is based out of Nigeria. And so a lot of the stuff that she is doing is counseling related things that her and I have talked about. But that being said, Nigeria doesn't have a governing board such as our stateside stuff. And so I was curious from your guys' perspective, is she able to count some of those hours towards her licensure, or any suggestions on that you guys may have to help her with that? Or is we just kind of out of luck and having her still kind of trying to do some other outside work to try to accumulate hours?
So she's here in Texas with you?
She is here in Texas.
Okay, and she's just doing telehealth type services to folks in Nigeria?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I don't know why that wouldn't be. Why, Christina, why would that not be countable? Why could we not count that?
In the past, if say someone had a Texas license in El Paso, but their practice was in New Mexico, we didn't want to encourage unlicensed practice. I don't know what the rules are in Nigeria. If you can, I think we would want to make sure that no rules have been broken where the client is, as far as license requirements. And Christine, if you have anything to add so I presume, is this an LMFT associate or an LPC associate?
She's actually both.
Yeah.
As for LPC, my understanding is if the supervisor can sign off on those hours, then we will count them.
Okay. I mean, if Nigeria doesn't regulate the profession, then you can practice there without a license. Mm-hmm. So that, that's why I'm kind of leaning towards, I'm like, why would this not be okay? I mean, I can't think of a reason why it would be wrong.
Yeah.
I get it if Nigeria regulated it and she wasn't licensed there. Like Sarah said, we don't want to encourage folks to break the law via the internet, but I understand I can't just give you a definitive answer and say, and put a stamp on it and say she's good to go. But as I'm sitting here and based on what you've represented to me, I can't see a problem with the LPC hours. Now on the MFT hours, you're going to have that 500 hour cap that she's going to run into there. So you just be wary of that. And you're probably not going to be able to petition for an exemption under that rule I talked about earlier in the presentation, because she's not doing the telehealth because of the pandemic. She's doing it because the company's in Nigeria. So she's probably not going to be able to benefit from that gubernatorial declared disaster there. So she's going to get caught by that 500 hour cap on the MFT side, but probably not on the LPC side.
And I was going to ask, so has this documentation already been submitted and it was denied, or you're just kind of asking in advance?
No, I'm asking in advance because I've been supervising her since she graduated and got her license, I think in August. And so we're realizing as she's trying to do some stuff on the side, it's going really, really slow. And we're starting to kind of talk about, hey, we're 6 months in and I don't know if you're going to make it in 5 years. And so we're trying to kind of get creative. And so thought I would use this platform to maybe ask the question and see, am I missing something and maybe being too restrictive in interpreting the rules, while I think from an ethical standpoint, she's doing phenomenal work as in following the scope of practice in terms of providing good services.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your question. I
Yeah,
appreciate your
that's
concern on the matter. And this Daryl said we can't pre-approve. And the point of supervision is to afford some public protection while the associate is learning. And that may be difficult to do when the client is so far away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and likewise, we've been very selective in terms of what kind of work she's doing with some of these clients in terms, and again, similar things along scope of practice in terms of being selective of the type of clients she's taking, referring those out to maybe other people, or, you know, if she has that ability, or suggesting that to their employer or things like that. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've said all I can say on it. I don't really know what else to add to it, but
yeah. The only thing I can say is, I mean, once it's submitted, we'll review it, and, you know, if there's any issues, we'll let you know, but otherwise at that point, you know, we'll review it and accept it or let you know. But
for whatever it's worth, it's not raising a red flag in my mind when you describe it. So whatever.
Well, that's exciting to hear, and she'll be excited too. Then I'm like, well, let's just move forward and see what we can do.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Holman, you just can't stay away from us, can you?
You know, 3 times the charm. I don't know if somebody has asked this in writing or in the future, and I'm assuming it'll come up a lot. But if it's inside of the board's ability, will you guys consider in the future having some type of reciprocity, at least with of licensing, with our neighboring states like Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas? You know, those are neighboring states, so that so that it's just easier on us. Because, you know, in us being, you know, obviously licensed, and I'm an LPC supervisor, because the need is so great in some of those small rural towns. My company, we have practices in some of the smaller rural towns, but they become borderline with some things. And I'm hearing all the conversation. The person may drive across the state line to see us, but if there's a child in need and we have to go visit the home, now I've just crossed state lines.
Yeah.
And it just poses a little bit of difficulty.
There are a couple of, okay, let me kind of let everybody know. I don't know if everybody's aware, but the only board or the only profession that has the ability to enter into reciprocity right now is psychology. And that's because the psychology board, when it was standalone, it had a statute that expressly gave me the authority to go out and try to establish reciprocity with sister states. None of the other boards have that. And y'all were not given that when we came into BHEC. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to work on the licensure compact part of it, so that if we can get Texas into a licensure compact for counseling, like we've done it for psychology and PsyPAC, and we're working on it for social work. I don't know that it'll ever happen for MFT, but we're definitely exploring that. The compact would help address some of what you're talking about. I'll tell you, Dr. Holman, one of the things I ran into on psych when I was trying to convince other states to do reciprocity with us is you get into this territorial squabbling match over, well, our rules are better than your rules. And so we're not going to say that your stuff is substantially equivalent to ours. You know, we want you to accept our folks, but we're not going to let your folks in unless they jump through these extra hoops. I can't tell you how many times I dealt with that, or I ran into I just don't have authority to do reciprocity, Daryl. Like New Mexico, I spent a long time trying to convince them to do reciprocity with Texas on psychology. And ultimately it came down to they didn't think they had statutory authority to do it. We had statutory authority, or we had a reciprocity agreement in psych with Louisiana, but when we made some licensing changes, both states then considered themselves no longer to be substantially equivalent to one another. And quite frankly, I'm not sure it was such a great deal for Texas psychologists anyways, because Louisiana truly didn't treat our folks as equivalents to theirs. They had to jump through some extra hoops. that we did not make Louisianans jump through whenever they came, west of the Sabine. So I didn't like that aspect of it, but either way, that agreement evaporated. So my point being is that we're going to have we need legislative changes if we were going to do reciprocity agreements for counseling, social work, or MFT. But I'll just be honest with y'all, I've got that ability at psych, and I have not been able to get it across the end zone. And I have tried. It's not for lack of trying. It's just you get into these goofy squabbling matches over, well, our rules are what's needed to protect the public and yours suck. So, we're not going to let your folks in, but we want you to take our, and it turns into this. It's not reciprocity. It's just endorsement. It's really a one-way street is what they want. So, I've become a little jaded on that. That's why I've kind of shifted more of my focus over towards licensure compacts. But that's just the cold hard reality of what we're looking at on that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your past efforts and even considering for the future. I knew it wasn't like a 100% BHEC type of decision. I knew it would have to be a collaboration, but yeah, I was just curious to know if there was any type of fighting stance for us to have those things done. Because in the Texas small little rural towns where they don't have access to a lot of healthcare in general, more or less mental health care, it's bordering a lot of other states. And once people find out, hey, there's a counseling center in this little small town, then people from the other state travel over too. And it kind of puts us in a little bit of a weird place. Yeah. Especially if we have a crisis and we have to go and visit a kid at their school, but the school is over in this place.
It becomes an arbitrary boundary once you've already been seeing them. They come over here to see you, and then all of a sudden you can't see them just because they're sitting at the house, 50 miles north of the red. It's just an arbitrary. I get it. I mean, it's goofy. It's a goofy position to be in, but it's a position we're in nonetheless. Right. So well, I hear you.
Thank you for your efforts. And if there's, I guess you guys can put out there if there's something we need to do, like letter writing or whatever. There are a lot of therapists who struggle with the same type of deal. So I think a lot of people would be interested in like doing something like that to try to bulk up your case or help you or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there will come a time if TCA can find a bill sponsor for that compact, that's where everybody's going to need to put their shoulder into it and start that letter writing and going, hey, we need this so that we're not facing these kinds of scenarios here. So there will come a time for that, but they got to find a bill sponsor for that first, someone to carry that bill.
Okay. Can't receive.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Montgomery, do you have a question for us?
Hello, yes. Hi. I was wondering, for instance, I actually got my LCSW not so long ago. And right after that, it was time to renew my license. It's so much money and time that goes into the study material for the exam. And then, you pass that grueling test. And right after that, I had to do my CEUs, and study and all of that. I wonder, would they consider that, at the time that your license is upgraded and completed, could it be just like extension before renewal, automatic or something like that? Had that been considered?
We went through a lot of that when we were setting up BHEC initially. I suspect what kind of where your situation is coming from is the fact that you were an MSW. You came from the MSW and you upgraded to the LCSW. Yeah. I suspect that's where that comes from. And I cannot remember for the life of me. There's a database rule that governs that. And I cannot remember what it says. If it says if the upgrade occurs within X amount of months of the renewal date, the renewal is bumped. I don't remember how it works. But that's something I need to go back and refresh my memory on. So, because I understand what you're talking about.
It's stated in rules. So if you search the consolidated rule book, Ms. Montgomery, you can see where that is in rules. So there was quite a bit of discussion about timeframes on that. And there's
So is it that basically if it's within a certain amount of time, you can't bump it back or extend it, or is that kind of what the rule?
Staff is obligated to a biennial renewal by statute. So as was explained to me when someone asked because they were dually licensed and one is the end of their birth month in 2022 and the other license is the end of their birth month in 2023, staff can't align those because staff can't do much different than the biennial renewal. That we're bound to that by statute. So we can't make it longer than 2 years.
Ms. Montgomery, take a look at, it's 883.2 is the rule, I think, that governs the initial renewal dates. Mm-hmm. Take a look at that. I think that's probably
okay. It seems that because you have done everything that you usually have to do to renew anyway by upgrading your license, because you still had to, even, just to be able to test, you have to do like the ethics and, other things. And so you've done so much to do the coursework, basically going over everything. And so it sounds to me like they should consider a change to that rule for upgrading your license.
We can visit with some of the council about that next time we're talking about rules. I'll tell you that becomes it sounds very easy to do. It's actually very difficult to accomplish because of the database SQL rules that have to be written to accommodate that, because there are, there's 30 something thousand social workers. We have to account for, well, what if you're not successful in upgrading your license? What if you don't have all the supervised experience you need? Then you still have an obligation, or you still want to renew that underlying license, that MSW, because you don't want it to go delinquent. So there's a whole host of things that we have to, consider there. But
but you're not able to test without pleasing a supervision time anyhow. So it's just after you actually pass the test and you get the new license.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. That's something we can keep in mind. We'll take a look at it and see. I know there's going to be some pretty significant database challenges there to doing what you're talking about doing. So, but anyway, we'll take a look at that.
I appreciate your comment, Ms. Montgomery.
Yeah. All right, and folks, we're kind of running long on time here. I would stay here till 5 easily, but I know everybody's got other things they need to do. So if you've got any questions or comments, I need you to put your hand up like right now, so that I have a good estimate on how many more we've got. Okay, caller, did you have a question or comment for us? All right, *6 to unmute yourself for those on telephone calls. Okay, hearing none.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Anna.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So I, like the lady that was talking before, I'm actually coming from California. And I'm still trying to kind of get all the information as much as possible with the state of Texas. And I was just wondering if there's a phone number that I can call. We have California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, where we can call like the legal team in case we have a question about anything with regards to the legality of any case. Is there a phone number or somewhere that we can call or access in case that we do have questions regarding a case in private practice or otherwise, so that we could get more information?
Well, if you're asking about the local, the Texas Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, that's going to be a different entity. That's actually the state association. This is the regulatory board. About about the only thing we could tell you if you called us is this is what the rule is. Here's where you find it. We're not going to be able to advise you about, oh, well, what you're considering doing is good, bad. That's not really what you want to call us about. You're going to need to talk to, an attorney about that or some trusted colleagues on that. So okay. I think probably what you're looking for is TAMFT. They probably have like a professional affairs director there. If they don't, they're going to be mad at me for even suggesting this now. But
I'm told that your liability insurance or your medical malpractice insurance may provide some legal resource.
Okay.
I'd reach out to TAMFT though, and see if they've got a resource like that. If you have a question about a rule, you can always email it to on the Contact Us webpage. Go under Current Rules. There's a drop-down menu that talks about current rules. You can email your question to that, and that goes to Patrick and I. And well, it goes to me, and then a lot of times I pass it off to Patrick. But it'll get to one of us, and we'll try to answer it if we can. If it's something we can't answer, we'll tell you, hey, you need to go talk to an attorney about this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Abdazi?
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm not sure whether you hear me. I had to switch on the phone. I can't even see any indications for
we can hear you.
Unmuting. Okay, thank you. Yes, I am a cognitive psychologist who teaches, now retired, teaches some of the time at the University of Texas at Arlington. And I've been licensed myself since 1983 in Texas. I often advise the doctoral students to study and try to pass the exam for licensure. I'm unclear what it's called these days. But because licensure is something that can be useful in a lifetime. But I wonder what I need to tell students what happens after they pass the exam. UTI is not, psychology departments, really cognitive, you could do assessment. They are not set up for, clinical supervision necessarily. How long would students, people who get a doctorate and they pass the exam, how long do they have to find supervision? Can they wait a few years, or does the exam become invalid? I don't remember the rules, and I would appreciate it if you advise me.
For psych, once you've passed the exam, you don't ever have to take it again. A passing score is a passing score. Now, what you don't want to do is dawdle around and trying to secure supervision, because all of the boards provide some. It's almost like a provisional or associate level status where they say, look, you can practice under supervision for this period of time to accrue the requisite experience needed for full licensure. Once that time period expires, you're out of luck. You got to go back and reapply for, if you're an MFT or an LPC, you'd have to go back and reapply. If you're psych, you have to reapply, but we're not going to give you another provisional license because we gave you 2 years once already. And in which case you then have to go you would have to seek supervised experience in an exempt setting. So psych is a little different from the others. LPC and MFT, you can reapply and get a new associate's license. Right, Sarah, on the MFT?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, social work, you would have to.
The supervised experience has to be between at least 24 months, not to exceed 48 months, and must have been completed within 5 years of the application date.
Yeah, social work is unique as well. It's kind of like psych. It has its own rule, and it has a 5-year moving window. So, you're asking about psych in particular. So once they pass the EPPP, no, that's all. They won't ever have to take it again. They can just have ASPPB send the score again, and we would accept it. So that's the answer to that question. But I just threw in the part about don't make sure you tell them don't dawdle on trying to get your supervision locked down and started, because if you fool around and you let that 2-year provisional license expire without accruing your supervised experience, it's going to be more difficult to get it in the future. You're going to have to go get it at an exempt setting. And the reason we do that is we just didn't want people perpetually practicing as a provisional licensee. It makes you tend to business during that first 2 years, or otherwise you got to go find a unique, an exempt setting in which to get it. So hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Well, if I may ask a little bit further down, because I'm 70 years old and I got licensed in 1983 and managed to get supervision back then, at the Fort Worth Public Schools. I mean, I am advising again the students to do this, to pass the test. What if and they may not, I mean, life has many changes. What if they want to start a more clinical experience 10 years later? And maybe in another state. Now, you can't talk about them, and I've been hearing a little bit about the other state. But let's say in the state of Texas, 10 years from now, I want to join exempt or non-exempt, whatever, a location that once licensed psychologist, I passed the test 10 years ago. What do I do today? Are you saying that students 10 years from now, those who passed, are only going to be limited to exempt locations and nowhere else?
Well, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're asking me to project what our current rules, how they would impact somebody 10 years. I can't do that. Assuming that our current rules were still in place 10 years in the future, they will probably have let their provisional license expire. I mean, the provisional license will have expired. So yeah, they're going to have to go find an exempt setting in which to finish their supervised experience, or actually
an
accrue
exempt setting means state, right?
State,
location.
University, any type of governmental employer, university setting. It seems like there may be one or two other types of exempt settings out there, but basically the big two are university and like state or local government type settings. TDCJ, Bureau of Prisons, those types of things. Those would be exempt.
And so when you say university, of course, you mean working at the counseling center rather than teaching courses.
Correct.
Something like that, right?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's 500 hours again over 2 years. What is it? Forgive me.
Say again.
Is it 500 hours over 2 years? What is I forget what the requirements are.
1,750 hours of postdoc supervised experience is what they need.
Okay. So 1,750, yeah. All right. Thank you. Yes?
They'll also have an issue with the gap rule too, Daryl.
Yeah. Yeah, if they accrued any supervised experience before they left for that 10 years, they're going to have a major gap there that they're going to have to justify. They may very well have to do the full 1,750 again and not get any credit for any postdoc accrued prior to the 10-year gap. It depends on what the 10-year gap was due to, what they were doing in that interim. I mean, if they move to Spain,
Alaska,
and we're practicing over or wherever, move somewhere else and we're practicing over there, then covering the gap's not going to be a problem. But they're probably not going to have to worry about that anyway, because then they could be licensed in another jurisdiction and we could get them in much easier. So it's just really difficult to try to war game all the possible scenarios that far out. But they could have.
Well, I
thank
you very much. No.
You bet.
It's very good to know, but because there's the issue. Like now, your stuff. Now you can pass the test. 10 years later, we're all going to be doing something else. Anyway, I thank you very much. Again, I'm very appreciative of all of these Zoom sessions, and I guard my license also very closely. It's been kind of something meaningful in my life to say yes, because I do work internationally. I'm licensed in Texas. It's not the stuff that I do is not exactly of licensing stuff, but it helps a great deal to be able to say that.
Good.
So again, I think the board.
We want you sending your renewal fees here. I don't care about those other jurisdictions where you're licensed. So stay licensed with us.
Yes, we're sending the renewals. No, I'm not licensed other than the government of Greece. I'm licensed in Greece. But I find most of the stuff that I do does not require a license. but it's been very valuable, frankly, for me and my thinking. I don't think I ever earned money as being a licensed psychologist. I think the only clear time that I ever needed it was for vaccination, COVID vaccination. They were vaccinating health staff on a priority basis, and I went there with my license. Anyway, I'm very appreciative, like so many other people, and I thank you, and we happily pay my license fee. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay. Juan Milam Reed, did you have a question for us?
Yes, I have a question. I think you've already answered it, but I just want to clarify. I have a traveling social worker who said that she was told from our board that she can count her hours toward her LCSW while she's in other states.
Okay.
And so is that a no?
Is she a current applicant with us?
She has not applied. She's under my supervision. So she's an LMSW working toward her LCSW hours, and she's working in a hospital in another state.
Okay.
As a traveling social worker.
How does she do that with just her, they let her practice over there with just her Texas license?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And they're okay with you supervising?
Yes.
I guess remote supervision?
Yes.
Sarah, is that, how's that sound to you?
I would have to, if I were looking at it and asking the board to look at it, I would request some documentation that waived the license requirement. If a license requirement was in that state, just because an employer lets you do it doesn't mean that the licensing authority in that state lets you do it. It's the individual's license, not the facilities. And we've had, back in the past in 2014, 2015, had quite a lot of social workers working with EAPs, employee assistance programs, that were cross state lines. And the EAPs said, sure, yeah, you can do this, but it wasn't their license and they didn't have any consequence for it. So I know my personal answer when I receive a question like that is I cannot speak for the board or predict how the board would act in any particular case. I cannot pre-evaluate or pre-approve any conduct that you may take or any action you may take. I can only assess it after the application has been received, the fee has been received, and the specific documentation has been received. So
there's your answer.
That's a little raining on your parade.
Okay, but you're saying she should get a waived license requirement from that state?
If indeed she has permission to work in that state. For example, some states opened up because of COVID and they were looking for assistance. But there would be some disaster declaration from that governor or some other executive order or something to that effect from the board that would show our board that license requirement was indeed waived and she wasn't indeed practicing without a license.
Okay. All righty. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
You bet.
Sticky situation.
Sharice, you have another question for us? Sharice? Okay. All right, let's start. We've got two phone callers here. All right, caller, did you have a question for us? *6 to unmute yourself.
You had taken my question earlier.
Okay.
So I'm good.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Caller, did you have a question? *6 to unmute yourself. All right, hearing none. And then the last one will be Shadonna Williams. She's got her hand up again. Miss Williams, do you have another question?
Just real quick, if you are a dual licensed professional, let's say you are a social worker and a psychologist, whatever, does one, let's say one license expires or you don't get something in, does that affect your current license in it, or whatever licenses you have, the requirements are separate for each licensure? These are for people that have more than one, license to practice.
Yeah, no, they're independent of one another. So if you got a psych license and a social work license and you let the psych lapse, your social work keeps going on.
Okay, perfect.
And in fact, they can have different renewal dates. That was something else we talked about when BIEC was first set up. We debated whether to make all the renewal dates the same across all the boards, but it was decided against that because we have so many dual licensees, it might financially ding you. When that did come up, you might be renewing 2 or 3 licenses, and that would be a huge chunk of money. Oddly enough, we've actually received more requests to make that happen. In other words, to sync it all up when we thought, everybody would be opposed to it, but it's done. We're probably not going to revisit that candidly because that's a pretty big database change that we'd have to make. So I just don't see us revisiting that issue anytime soon.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we have bored y'all for way longer than what we normally would. So when we end the webinar, you guys are going to get a survey. It's just a little 2-question survey. Shouldn't take you more than 30 seconds to answer it. Do that. That will give me your email address so that I can then send out the CE certificates. I had one individual text me a minute ago, and she said she had logged out during the course of this presentation, and she was able to take the survey. So hopefully we will have already captured all the email addresses for everybody that has dropped off, and we can get them their CE certificates. Hey, we're learning as we go here, so cut us a little bit of slack on this. Don't yell at me too much. If it doesn't work out, it's my fault, nobody else's. I'm the one that set this thing up. So like I say, we're trying to get it done. So it's been a pleasure having everybody. We really appreciate all the participation that you guys have shown today. You got a ton of questions. I see we got a lot of open questions that we didn't get to in the Q&A. There's only so much time and effort we can put into being a keyboard warrior. I actually prefer it whenever you ask questions live, but hey, we take what we can get here. So anyway, I don't know when we're going to do this again next. It'd certainly be no more than quarterly after each council meeting, but I feel like probably twice a year is about all I'm going to have the bandwidth for. So this may be, we may have one more after this year, or I guess we've technically done 2 this fiscal year. Depends on which way I look at it, fiscal or calendar years. But anyway, I'll shut up now before the attendance really starts to drop. Thank you all for participating. We really appreciate it. And I think the LPC board and the MFT board have something similar coming up pretty soon. So if you're on one of those, if you've got a license to one of those boards, make sure you stay attuned to the email address so that you get the invite for that. And then you can go there and you will not have to listen to me during those meetings. I can assure you, it will just be those board members. So I'm going to make Patrick go though. He's going to have to go sit through it. So, but thanks again, everybody. I hope everybody has a good afternoon, and it's been a pleasure working with everybody this afternoon.